Top story, continuing coverage in the trial of a Raleigh County woman accused of first-degree murder. Natalie Cochran is accused by prosecutors of poisoning and killing her husband with insulin 6 years ago in 2019. Our Robert Castillo has been following the story closely, and he was back in court for day 5 of this trial. He shares more in this report. Robert, what have you seen?
Day 5 of the Natalie Cochran murder trial started off with the prosecution calling Dr. Paul Uribe to the stand. Dr. Uribe is a forensic pathologist who specializes in unusual deaths. Dr. Uribe performed a second autopsy on Michael Cochran's body. Dr. Uribe says he wasn't able to find any evidence to help determine a cause of death. However, the doctor says there was no reason why Michael Cochran had such low blood sugar other than being given insulin.
There's no explanation for why a non-diabetic, otherwise relatively healthy male would have such profound hypoglycemia and also refractory hypoglycemia as well. And there's no other viable explanation for it. The only reasonable conclusion that I can make is that he was given insulin.
Dr. Uribe then being cross-examined by defense attorney Stanley Selden, who seemingly tried to discredit Dr. Uribe's findings. Selden pointing out that the doctor's autopsy was performed almost 5 years after Michael Cochran's death.
You conducted an autopsy approximately 4 years after Michael's death, with still no objective physical evidence of insulin in Michael's body. Is in fact correct?
Correct.
Dr. Uribe later doubling down on his theory of insulin being put into Michael Cochran's body externally, while Selden argues the point that no injection marks were found by hospital staff, Dr. Uribe or Dr. Piotr Kubicek, who performed the first autopsy on Michael Cochran 7 months after his death. Timothy Bledsoe, a retired West Virginia state trooper, taking the stand next. As an investigator, he testified to text messages between Natalie Cochran and family members about investments in her Ponzi scheme. Some messages revealing that Natalie Cochran had admitted to not being transparent with Michael about the ordeal.
These texts are an example of how we learned that Michael Cochran discovered that there were aspects of the business, particularly related to the purchase or investment into contracts and the amount of money that investors were investing versus what he believed, what he had been told by the defendant.
Bledsoe going on to testify that Natalie Cochran gave him conflicting information about what happened to Michael Cochran the day he became ill. The retired state trooper going on to say that after Michael Cochran died, the Ponzi scheme continued and Natalie Cochran continued to look for investors to fund the fake military contracting business. We're going to continue to follow this case very closely and bring you the very latest. Here for you in Beckley, Robert Castillo, WVVA News.
Thank you, Robert. Now, Lieutenant Bledsoe was also cross-examined by defense attorney Matthew Victors, who pointed out that bank accounts for the Ponzi scheme's funds were in both Michael and Natalie Cochran's names. Belongings were also reportedly seized that belonged to Michael and Natalie Cochran. That's after Natalie was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison for that Ponzi scheme. Now,